Hey guys, I just want to jump on here and talk about water cutting. So, as a nutrition coach, I see a lot of talk online on social media about water cutting, about how do we do it, when should we do it, why should we do it. And, my best advice is for new athletes to the sport or any sport really, unless it's required of you to really lean down like in bodybuilding, water cutting should not be something that you do. If you're not able to make it in the weight class that you want to be in without going to extremes, then you have no business water cutting. Just go in strong, don't worry about the weight, just get the experience on the platform. For my beginner athletes, I'm never going to recommend any kind of water cut because it's just not necessary. Unless you need to have a certain weight class met for a qualifying type meet like nationals or worlds, or you're going to be breaking all-time world records, you do not need to be cutting down, okay? Like using me, for instance, I used to compete 181. It took me 2 years to cut down to 165 and maintain strength. I did not take anything to the extreme. And now I just do a tiny little water cut before each one of my meets, like maybe 4 or 5 pounds, if that. Literally, I can take an Epsom salt bath and pull the water out without depleting my calories. Because the last thing you want to do is go through a water cut, drop too much weight, and then you lose your power, and then you can't perform. So what is the point in that? So the point here that I'm making is new athletes, do not water cut. Just go in strong, train where you're going to compete. Don't worry about that weight class. If you want to drop down to another weight class over time, that's fine. Like how I did, went from 181 to 165 over the course of 2 years. I did it the right way. And now I'm stronger than I ever was at 165 compared to even when I was at 181 because I'm fitter, I recomp my body properly, and I'm healthier. So my recommendation for new athletes, like I said, no water cut. Now, if you are at a more elite level of powerlifting, more experienced powerlifting, or like bodybuilding, like myself, then yes, water cuts are definitely a good thing to look into as long as you're within just a few pounds of what that target weight class is. Like for me, I try to stay within 5 pounds of whatever weight class I am trying to compete in, because then that way the water cut that I do not have to deplete my calories very much at all. I'm just water loading and flushing out that last little bit of water so that I can make it to weigh-ins and be right at weight. I try to be very strategic about my water cuts. I want to make sure that most of the time, I want to weigh in right at 165 if I can. This last meet for the Power Surge, I weighed in a little bit lighter than normal, and that was only because of the coefficient. I knew that the other 165ers were going to be very close in numbers, so it was going to come down to who weighed in the lightest. And that worked out in my favor. I ended up, staying competitive by dropping just a little bit extra, but I didn't sacrifice any power because I was lucky enough that in prep, I was able to get down to like 167, 168. So I only had to drop a couple of pounds. So it really didn't affect me at all there. So that being said, with a water cut, it is important to be very strategic. There is a refeed process after the fact. And also when it comes to meet day nutrition matters as well, especially if you are doing a water cut. So with my nutrition clients, I always provide a post weigh-in protocol and also meet day protocol after a water cut. So to kind of break down how the water cut works, you're going to spend a few days prior to weigh-ins overloading on water. So what that does is it tricks the body, because you're drinking an excess of water, that it's tricking the body and it's flushing out the water in your system to create the normal balance where your body is happy. So with that overloading of water, it flushes out all the excess and then a little bit extra. So throughout the week, you're going to see your weight kind of slowly drop. The first couple of days of the water load, you might see an increase in weight. This is where most of my clients will panic. They're like, oh my gosh, I went up 3-4 pounds. But when you think about it, okay, you just drank like 2.5 gallons of water. Like, that's heavy, right? So as the body adjusts to this water load, you will slowly see your weight decrease. And then ideally, when you go to weigh in, you're right spot on weight, not too far under. That way we maintain strength and we don't deplete too much. So when one of my athletes is in a water cut, I make sure that I check in every single day, making sure that they're on track. If they're losing weight too fast, then that tells me that I can increase their calories so that they're not depleted, and keep them strong throughout the water cut so that they're not just suffering and starving and miserable, right? So then post weigh-ins, want to make sure that we're getting those carbs back in our system. Protein doesn't so much matter during this time. We want those glycogen storages to go back up. So as soon as weigh-ins gets done, I highly recommend getting an IV. Most meets now have those accessible right after weigh-ins. I am a big fan. I usually sign up for one if it's available. If it's not available at the meet venue, I go find an offsite location. There's a lot of different med spas like around here. We've got Restore Hyper Wellness that does them. But it's just a really quick way to get those fluids back in your system and perk you back up. And then on meet day nutrition does matter. A lot of times I see athletes come to the meet with like gummy bears and junk, and like I don't even understand why you would want to eat stuff like that when you're supposed to be performing at your best. It might work for some people, but for me, I really recommend keeping it clean, keeping it close to what you were doing during prep or during the off season, so that you don't start to crash as the meet is going on. I always recommend, eating a good solid breakfast before the meet starts, and then in between each lift, refueling, fast digesting carbs. Like some of my go-tos, Honey Stinger waffles, Uncrustables, Rice Krispie treats. I like granola bars. I'll do protein shakes or carb powder as well, just to kind of keep me going throughout the day. Pedialyte is another good one. I like to have Pedialyte or like liquid IV on hand just to stay hydrated throughout and keep the sodium in my system so that I don't cramp up. And I stay feeling good. So that is just kind of my take on water cutting, and kind of the how and the why and the when should I do this, but again, just to go back to the beginning, new athletes, do not water cut. It is not worth it. Not until you get into the competitive arena where it does matter. Just get the experience, stay healthy, stay strong, and stay smart. We don't want to do any extreme cuts. Like I said, no more than 8% of the body weight. I always try to get people within 5 pounds of their goal for weigh-ins so that we're not cutting too much and sacrificing strength. So I hope you found this video helpful. And I do offer water cuts. So if anybody is interested, that is a service that I do provide. So reach out, let me know.